Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Myers. Welcome to the Myers Detox podcast. You can learn all about detox at myersdetox.com and get the free transcripts for all of these podcasts on myersdetox.com. So thanks for tuning in today. We have my friend Niki Gratrix on the show. Fascinating show. It's always so invigorating and stimulating talking to Niki Gratrix. She's so brilliant. And we'll be talking today about the connection between early childhood trauma, or just also called adverse childhood events, how those can cause a condition called pyroluria to epigenetically express or just cause your genes to turn on the issues caused by pyroluria, which are zinc deficiency, B6 deficiency, and manganese deficiency, among others, and how that in turn will prevent heavy metal detoxification, and why so many people struggle with heavy metal detoxification when they attempt it. And we'll talk about all the different ways that you can very simply and safely and easily and inexpensively address this trauma that is causing this condition and then reverse it. And so, and it's important for so many reasons to address emotional trauma as well. We all have it, and it causes so many different issues. We talk about the statistics on the show today in the connection between childhood trauma and the dramatic increase, even fourfold, 4 times or 400% of health issues from people that the more abused people have, the more health issues they tend to have later in life. So it's not just about your ability to detox or not, but this can give you a clue if you are very ill or have trouble detoxing, you've attempted a detox and you're not able to. This is one of those clues you want to pay attention today. And we're also going to be discussing vagus nerve tone and how to improve your vagal nerve tone as well, which is very important for detoxification. And we'll also discuss the shocking statistics on how prevalent pyroluria is. It's really mind-boggling, and how bioenergetics can help to emotionally detox and release trauma very, very simply. We talk about a couple different methods on the show today. One of them is biofield tuning, this very powerful sound therapy method and how that works. We'll also talk about the research and all of the studies out there on the body's energy field. It's scientifically proven that we have an energy field and that trauma can imprint on the energy field. And so unless you're working in the energy field to address trauma, you're not going to be very successful. So I know a lot of people have gone to therapy and done different things, and those are wonderful. Cognitive behavioral therapy and other, conventional modalities, but you really need to be paying attention to working in the body's energy field, especially if you want to release and overcome adverse childhood events and trauma, which we all suffer. We all have trauma of some sort or another. And we'll also discuss the role of stress and how this trauma causes stress, which then contributes to a lot of the roadblocks we encounter in detoxification. So really, really good show today. I know you guys listening are very concerned about detoxification and what your levels in your body are of heavy metals. So I created a quiz. You can go to heavymetalsquiz.com, take this 2-minute quiz based on some lifestyle questions. We can kind of, extrapolate what your relative level of exposure is to toxins and perhaps your body burden of toxins. So if you take that quiz, you'll get your quiz results. And then I give you a free video series answering a lot of your frequently asked questions, like how long does it take to detox? What type of, where do I start with detoxification? What type of testing is best to determine my heavy metal levels in my body? So go check that out at heavymetalsquiz.com. Take the quiz, get your results, and get the free video series afterwards. So my guest today, Niki Gratrix, she's an award-winning nutritional therapist, a bioenergetic practitioner, and transformational coach. helping people to optimize their energy. She's also one of the foremost experts on adverse childhood events and trauma and how to address trauma in unconventional ways. And in 2005, she co-founded one of the largest mind-body clinics in integrative medicine in the UK. And the results with patients at the clinic were published as a preliminary study in 2012 in the British Medical Journal Open. And Niki is also right now co-hosting the Trauma in Mind Body Super Conference, launching on June 29th, 2020. You can join this absolutely free conference to learn how to address your emotional trauma at traumasuperconference.com. Go check that out. She's got 90 different speakers, just encompassing every aspect of trauma and, more importantly, how to address it and get rid of it so that you can live your best life and wake up feeling joyful. So go check that out. Niki, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Wendy. It's great to be here.
So you are the trauma expert. I love all the work, everything that you talk about on nikigratrix.com. And you have an amazing trauma super conference coming up, and I wanted to talk about that as well. But I wanted to discuss the really compelling connection that is the culmination of your life's work in talking about trauma and its connection to disease, increased rates of health issues and disease very dramatically later in life, and how these adverse childhood events can lead to a condition called pyroluria, and we'll discuss what that is, and how that condition prevents and interferes in heavy metal detoxification, which is what we're discussing on this podcast, and removing these roadblocks to detoxification. So first, why don't we just define what pyroluria is?
Yeah, so pyroluria is it's a genetic condition that's present in up to 15% of the population. But in my experience, it's rampant in the sort of sense that the epigenetic expression of it. So stress will trigger it in most people, but about 15% of the population have it and are born with it. And essentially, it's a block in the heme synthesis pathway. And heme is the little part of red blood cells that carries the iron. And essentially, when there's a blockage in that synthesis pathway, the upshot is that you get something in your urine called HBl, and this molecular compound attaches to all your zinc, manganese, B6, and it also makes you biotin and iron deficient. So 50% of the population need to be supplementing zinc, B6, manganese for life on an ongoing basis. And the rest of us, if we've had stress, and this is where it links to early life stress and childhood trauma, because everybody's had stress, and that's where a lot of it's all coming from. It's the reason that pyroluria is likely to be so rampant. Now, you just think about this in the direct connection to heavy metals. Just B6. B6 is needed for methylation, for the methylation cycle to work, and it also phase 2 liver detox. And also zinc is doing things like disarming the immune system when you're deficient in zinc, and lowering all your stomach acid, so you're starting to get mineral deficient. All of these things, blood sugar imbalance with a lack of manganese, all three impact your mitochondrial function. What you're doing is becoming a storage unit for all the heavy metals that you're exposed to in the environment. So it's a massive risk factor that will vastly increase your likelihood of storing heavy metals and not clearing them out. And they're getting more and more prevalent in the environment. So it's more and more important to make sure that you're not the pyroluric who's in the 15%, or that you're not in that 85%, which is basically, it's rampant. And I've come to this conclusion because of all the clinical work that I do, and I see a lot of people with emotional issues and trauma. Everyone I'm testing is testing positive for pyroluria. We have Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt saying that he's seeing over 75 to 80% of all his clients are pyroluric, and he's seeing tons of people with heavy metal toxicity, the Lyme sort of group, chronic fatigue syndrome, autism is up there at 80%. So he's already confirmed that as well. And I'm saying It's very interesting because Klinghardt, I think, actually thinks that the bugs are causing the heme problem and are leading to the pyroluria. My hypothesis is like, no, all his clients were already traumatized. They were traumatized because of early life stress, which we could talk just briefly about the stats and the prevalence and the implications of that. But one of the ways that this early life stress translates into chronic complex illness across the board in adulthood is that it triggers pyroluria. Early life stress impacts the nervous system, affects the biofield, multi-layered impact. But one of the key pathways I want to share with people is this key critical pyroluria condition that becomes triggered. And the interesting thing is, if you are in the 15%, you will need to supplement for life, but you can be cured of pyroluria if you take the supplements to rebuild your level up, if you're in that stress epigenetic group. But you'll only be cured if you do heal the stress and the trauma, which has impacted the neurological system and the biofield. And so that's what I'm finding with clients, is that if they're not in the pyroluria 15% group, you can be cured and you don't have to keep taking supplements, and you won't keep building up heavy metals if you balance the nervous system. And that whole side of things, the nervous system, the biofield side, is the bit that gets downplayed and ignored. And, you know, that it's ultimately in 85% of people, it's that stress which is causing the heavy metal buildup because of pyroluria. It triggers pyroluria. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's something, that's why I personally am focusing on working on my trauma, clearing my trauma, using different methods of bioenergetics, in different modalities like that, like Nest Health, for instance, to work on my trauma and clear it, because I do, in our discussions, that I have pyroluria also that's caused from trauma. I don't have it genetically. I've already, established that. And I think this is a huge piece of the puzzle. When you mentioned that to me, I thought, oh my God, this is so brilliant. Because, and you mentioned that this, trauma and then pyroluria, and then heavy metal accumulation also causes inflammation, which leads to so many chronic health issues that we have today. And so let's get to define trauma, and then we'll get to some other things that you touched on earlier. So you are an expert in trauma and adverse childhood events. So tell us about that, and then how that affects our health.
Yeah, so the word stress is a wildly overused word, and trauma is not a well understood word, and that is getting out there more. It'll also get wildly overused as well, most likely. So first of all, do we just talk about trauma for a second? There's two different distinct types of trauma, and at the moment the general sort of link association with the word trauma with most people is the sort of trauma like being in a war zone, maybe an assault, maybe being in a car accident, something which was a shock. It was too much to process and deal with at the time, so it leaves an imprint on us. But that type of trauma is in response to a discrete event, and it leads on to something which is a diagnosable condition called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, the point is that is, number one, pretty rare. It's overall very rare. Overall, it's a big deal when somebody has it, and it's important to address, but it's actually rare. It's also pretty curable, and conventional interventions for that would be an intervention called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprogramming. So that's what the world-leading experts are saying about that type of trauma. When I'm talking about trauma, I'm talking about something which is way more rampant. It's called developmental trauma. It's also known as attachment trauma. That's early life stress. It's stress which occurs before age 18, and it's specifically to do with the bonding and our relationships with our key caregivers. So if we are chronically verbally abused, if we're chronically emotionally neglected, if there's problems in the family like substance abuse, addiction, domestic violence, or it could be physical, sexual, or emotional abuse as well, or just physical, well, not just physical, or physical, emotional neglect. So all of these things is ambient trauma. It's relational and is ongoing. It's not something, it's just a one-off thing. And it turns out that less than 45% of adults securely attach with their caregivers. So we have an epidemic of attachment developmental trauma, which is really what it really comes down to is a lack of love and care coming from the parental figures. It's not always mum and dad, it's whoever was the key caregivers. And quite often it's not their fault. They're just doing what they are got from their childhood. And it's often a non-verbal process, how we bond with our key caregivers, especially below age 4. It's non-verbal, it's eye contact, it comes through tone of voice, whether somebody has a kind of, it's actually energy, it's an energetic connection. And when we as children don't get that, and hardly any of us do these days, especially with industrialization, parents being basically distracted all the time, they've got jobs to do and all the rest of it, we have an epidemic of neglect and abuse that's happening. And the adverse childhood event study you mentioned, massive study done by the CDC, Kaiser Permanente, 17,500 adults. It was, by the way, interestingly, it was mostly the white population, white middle-class population, because they thought that this kind of early life stress and trauma might be in minorities, maybe, or people in the poverty line or below the poverty line. And it turns out it's not true at all. It's rampant across all socioeconomic groups. Yes, there's an income gradient. The lower your income, the more adverse childhood events you have. But being above the poverty line doesn't save you from ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. So this was the shock that everybody went through when the researchers did that study, the ACEs study, was like, wow, this is across the board. This is everybody. This is, not just in minorities. So that is, just with this early life stress, it becomes internalized in the body. So when we have this early life stress, the brain is still developing and the body is still developing, and the stress becomes our identity. This state becomes a trait. It becomes who we are. It changes the way our neural pathways in the brain are built. It imprints onto the biochemistry and the energy field. So we're sort of walking stress. And also it means that in adulthood, your ability to cope with stress is set up by your early life experience. So people who were in the war, the soldiers in the war, in war zones, when they were checked, only some soldiers get PTSD in response to the same events. Yeah, it's the ones who had early life stress who are the ones who tend to develop PTSD. The ones that don't have early life stress and have good social relations are the ones that don't tend to develop PTSD. So essentially, your ability to cope with inevitable stressful adult events, just general stress coping as well, like having tons of emails to do, job, kids to look after. Our threshold of what triggers this into a stress response is much lower if we've had early life stress. So we're less resilient, we're more likely to get PTSD, we're more likely to perceive the whole world as being stressful if we've had early life stress, because we're less able to do things like self-soothe. We have less self-love. We are more prone to bipolar, anxiety, depression, ADD, all of the mental health conditions. And by the way, what's hugely interesting with the ACEs study is a massive correlation between, if you have a moderate level of ACEs, 4 ACEs, you have a 400% increased risk of depression, anxiety, dementia, Alzheimer's, across the board in all the mental health conditions. And how interesting is that all the research of Pyroluria started with the mental health conditions. Why? Because Pyroluria makes you B6 deficient. Now your neurotransmitters are all over the place. So you need B6 to produce serotonin that leads on to melatonin. You need it for obviously that's tryptophan, GABA, dopamine, glycine, taurine. You need B6. So that's just one of the ways that pyroluria and early life stress will translate into a chronic mental health issue. And also there's all the other knock-on effects of not clearing out heavy metals, and that will make you go mad as a hatter as well.
Yeah.
So as Dr. Pomper talks about going mad as a hatter because of mercury toxicity. So, maybe you have a mouthful of fillings, early life stress, and you're pyroluric. It's a perfect storm you're going to end up toxic and with some kind of chronic illness. So I hope that's sort of helped people understand that we have this a silent epidemic that's been going on of this early life stress that impacts us neurologically, biochemically, and at the biofield level. And we are imprinted with that stress. All the stress studies, by the way, in adulthood, in the science, it's never about the external circumstance, because some people get stressed by certain things and the other person doesn't. So it's always your perception of stress. It's not the external event. What's your threshold of coping with stress? How is that set up? It's set up by our childhood experiences. It's early life stress, and our genetics thrown in that will make us more or less able to cope with those things as well.
Yeah, and many times there's people with mental health issues that they're perceiving threats in their environment when there are none. Where we see with people with borderline personality disorder, or people that are like maybe gaslighting, they perceive these stressors that just aren't there because it's internal. It's their brain that's been wired incorrectly, for instance. So I love this information so much, because so when people are stressed like this, so they are kind of just set up to be chronically stressed, to have more stressful kind of reactions to their environment than the next person given the same stressor. And I think there's a reason so many people today, or this is the reason that many people's like foot is on the gas pedal and they can't let up. So they're trying to relieve stress. They're trying to feel better, feel more at peace, more relaxed, but they can try to do meditation, or they try to do yoga, and they're just right back where they started before doing that, relaxation type exercise. And, this stress prevents detoxification. It prevents people's bodies to be working correctly. It prevents their body's ability to process and release metals, number one, because their stress hormones are so high. Their body is just not in detox mode. You have to be in that parasympathetic part of your nervous system for your body to be able to detox. You have to be sleeping really well to detox, and for your liver to be functioning in the evening when you're, primarily working on detox. Can you talk a little bit about that and how trauma contributes to that?
Yeah, that's hugely important. It's how you get all these factors coming together, creating this perfect storm. The interesting thing is, the norm is trauma and stress. That we are in a society that, I think it was Krishnamurti said, it's no sign of health to be well adapted to a sick society, something along those lines. Like the norm, the standard is trauma. The standard is lack of attachment, and you can kind of see it with the craziness going on in the world, right? Attachment trauma, it'll lead to people being overgivers, overachievers, not making time to do the self-care thing, not doing circadian rhythm, not being able to stick to the diet, all of those things. So, but it also creates the kind of people a little bit towards the sociopathic side. That's where it comes from. It comes from having parents that, genetic propensity, and then a lack of caring childhood. And then and they are those types of people are attracted to power, and then we keep voting for them. Sorry, I just got political there for a second, but this is the cause so much of society's ills and issues, and the health issue as well. This epidemic of chronic illness that we have, so much of it, you can't ignore this piece, this emotional piece. It's a huge part of this picture. And so, these other factors, like you said, like getting good sleep, a diet to manage blood sugar control is like critical in this process. All of these things that we need to be doing on a daily basis. The issue is to really get to the stress and to relieve the stress. It's a lot deeper than people really realize. Those things like just circadian rhythm, blood sugar, those are really important things, and they can make a big difference. What I'm discovering is some of the things you can do to stimulate the vagus nerve. They're important to do that on a lifestyle basis as well, but often you've got to go a little deeper, to be honest. You have to go a little bit deeper. Some people need to physically go a bit deeper because there's a level of brain degeneration. They need some stem cell triggers and red light therapy, PEMF therapy, this kind of thing to stimulate the brain, so the brain will stimulate the vagus nerve. So some people, actually, we need to do a lot of brain regeneration work. There's so many attacks happening on the brain right now, whether whether it's 5G, EMFs, terrible fats that people are eating, the diets, trans fats, the buildup of heavy metals. Our brains are under attack right now. And if a brain that's not functioning is what causes low vagal tone as well, by the way, or this is probably the main reason. But so even when we start to do these lifestyle things like regular yoga, meditation, all of those things are important, but you want you to really get to some of this core, where some of the core stresses. We're holding stress in our bodies, in our biofield, to a degree that we're only probably 50% or less aware of, the majority of us. Things like shame, self-hatred, all those kind of things come from the attachment trauma, from basically an environmental failure where we didn't fully bond with our parents. As a child, we have to protect that relationship because it's our survival's dependent on it, right? So what happens is the child goes, well, it can't be the parents' fault. It can't be out there in the environment. It has to be me. There's something wrong with me, and I have to make up for that. And that's where the drives to become things like the overgiver. Tons of therapists, psychotherapists, moms, we're all the overgiver types. And we learned that we didn't get unconditional love. We got ignored, we got neglected, maybe even physically abused. So what we did to make up for that, because we're obviously not lovable, we're obviously not just good enough as we are, we have to make up for it by, for example, well, if I give to others enough, I'll earn the love. So it's conditional. Same with the achiever types. The achiever types feel worthless unless they're, having a massive successful career or having a huge impact in the world, achieving, when in truth, a lot of that is driven by self-love deficit and a lack of self-worth. This is deep stuff, that it's a lot deeper, and it requires a lot more reflective work and, doing questionnaires, getting it cognitively. And then we'll talk about transmuting that, which is a whole other story as well, which we'll touch on last. But there's also another type, is the perfectionist type. Those are the types that are like, okay, I'll just get things perfectly done. If I do things right, I'll be okay. Then I'll be lovable. So people have these built-in identity level belief systems that most of it's unconscious to people. So you could be holding, by the way, still also rage, anger, all kinds of emotions stuck there in your energy field from 20 years ago. So, and it's all of that is creating an incoherent energy field. It's creating dissonance in the field, disruption in the energy field. That's creating a lowered heart rate variability, and it's reducing your vagal tone. And it's creating all kinds of imbalances in the biochemistry, because our biofield and what's going on energetically in the body is a master regulator of what's going on in the biochemistry as well. So all of that stuff, our identity, our unresolved trapped emotions that are stuck there that we couldn't process at the time, we were either too young, or we were in denial that anything was going on, or we just didn't even know. Emotional neglect is a nightmare. It's not what happened, but what didn't happen. Really hard to self-identify. All of that is where most of the stress is. And it's actually the reason why we did the Trauma Mind Body Super Conference, because we got all the psychology people stuck together with all the functional medicine, naturopathic people to kind of go, look, speak to each other, talk to each other more, look at both sides. It's a perfect storm where it's all of these factors coming together, which creates a end result of losing your health and, potentially losing your ability to live fully.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important. That's why I love having you on the show. It's so important to talk about this trauma and how it's an underlying root cause of so many health issues, because people are just overlooking this. Like, they're going to functional medical practitioners, to conventional doctors, and trying different stress relief techniques, just trying all these different things and supplements, and they're trying to do all these physical issues, hoping that's going to correct their health, or they're going to be able to meet their health goals, addressing things physically only, and only looking at that. And there's this whole other side. It's where looking at the trauma, looking at the trauma's effect on the physical health, the trauma's effect on the body's energy field, and how it imprints the energy field. And we'll get to that in a second. And so that's why I love that you are doing this trauma super conference, so that people can learn more about this. For anyone listening that is chronically ill and they've just been on this merry-go-round of constantly going to different doctors. It's so important to listen to a conference like this. And it's why I'm talking more and more about trauma, because I've worked with thousands of people and became very, very frustrated with, how do I get someone better if they are so ill, they can't take supplements, they've tried all these different things, they can only eat 5 foods, they're bedridden. Like, what do you do with these people? And they've tried everything already. I'm like, there's something more going on. And so it's when, I met you, I met Harry Massey of Nest Health, just trying to look at this other side of the coin. And so you address, talk about all these things. With how many speakers are on your summit?
Over 90.
90. Oh my God. So if you want to learn about trauma and how it affects your health and what to do about it, listen to this conference. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so with the conference, we address all aspects. So we have people talking about how do you resolve PTSD, which is the one-off discrete event. So, and we have people talking about EMDR and PTSD, the difference between PTSD and developmental trauma. So we help people understand that. And then we've got the world experts who are the developmental trauma experts, like Dr. Diane Paul Heller, Dr. Lawrence Heller, the attachment styles, attachment trauma. Lawrence Heller's written a brilliant book called Healing Developmental Trauma. Highly recommend that book if you want to learn more about it. So we do what we call the top-down approaches. So what we've designed it so that there are top-down approaches and all the bottom-up approaches, and the middle ground, which is the nervous system. So we've got everybody. If you want to be happy and healthy and feel good emotionally, you've got to have a healthy body. You need to address the biochemistry. That's really important. So everything that matters. So we have experts speaking on blood sugar control, food sensitivities, circadian rhythm management, how to get good sleep, all these things that function, adrenal fatigue, sex hormone imbalances, thyroid issues, nutrient deficiencies. We've got people talking about Pyroluria. So we've got people talking about neurotransmitters. So all the bottom up things, and all those things can be important. So you get a taste of all of those. Then we've got, the biochemistry, the stuff you do on the biochemistry won't work if your nervous system is stuck in either freeze state or fight flight. So if you're not in that good vagal tone, high vagal tone, so important, it just won't work. You won't be able to help. You won't be able to very well solve the trauma at the emotional level, and also your biochemistry just won't come good if you don't balance the autonomic nervous system. So we've got a whole set of people talking about how do you do that? Practical steps to stimulate the vagus nerve. Anybody wanting to regain their health, you have to start engaging and in things every day that will stimulate the vagus nerve. I've mentioned Modius Health quite a few times, which is modiushealth.com. No financial affiliation there. A great vagus nerve stimulator that I found that online, because people are always asking me, and it's pretty affordable. So there are electrical devices. There's things like you touched on meditation, yoga, qigong, singing, gratitude journaling. There's a lot of practical lifestyle things. So we cover all of those. Sometimes people need to go a bit deeper because the brain is a little degenerated, and we need to stimulate the neural cells in the brain to get the vagus nerve back online. We've got Dr. Karazian talking about that. Red light, Ari Whitten on red light therapy, Paula on PEM therapy. So there's lots of ways to regenerate the brain, and all the ways to start loads of therapies that will just balance the autonomic nervous system. EMDR will do that. Somatic experiencing, Dr. Peter Levine, which can be applied to PTSD or developmental trauma. It's actually applied to both. The neuroaffective relational model with Dr. Lawrence Heller, that's balancing the autonomic nervous system. Body up posture approaches, hands-on touch therapies all help balance the autonomic nervous system and get the trauma out of that, so that we basically are in a nervous system state which is calm, balanced, that will allow your body to function properly. Because when you stimulate the vagus nerve innervates so many organs in the body. The only thing it doesn't innervate is the adrenals, which is what you would expect, right? But if you don't have good vagal tone, your digestion won't be working, you won't be detoxing, you won't be digesting food, you won't be moving the food through the digestion. breath rate, everything is, so inflammation won't be switched off if you have low vagal tone. So the vagus nerve, critical. So we have people on every aspect of that. And then we also have more on the top down and the energy only approaches. So lots of energetic approaches. EFT and EMD are actually both energy psychologies. But we talk about network spinal analysis, which is a form of chiropractic, very powerful, that will sort of flush through, working on the spinal cord, and will flush the energy through the spinal cord and kind of get the energy flowing again. And it kind of just flushes out anything that's dissonant. The interesting thing is trauma leaves an imprint on the nervous system and the biochemistry. So you need to correct both of those. But it actually lives in the biofield. The information, the memory and the actual emotion, it sits in the biofield, which is also in the waters of the body. If you miss that level, you're not really clearing the root cause. And that's where one of my main focuses is on the biofield, using sound therapy and information medicine to help clear out this dissonant sort of information in the energy field. And it's actually, I'll just mention, Carl Pribram was a world-leading neuroscientist. He's the one who said, where is our memories stored? If you cut up a neuron in the brain, you won't find a memory there. They've never done that. The brain neurologists, it's not there. So it was Carl Pribram, who is a world-renowned German neurologist, who said he reckons that the things like memories, skills, learning how to do things, and including memory of trauma, is stored in the field created around the brain by all the neurons firing together. So it's in the field. This is what HeartMath have found. It's the field around the heart as well. So they can link incoherent heart rate variability and heart field with lower negative emotions. So the emotions and the memories are energy and information in the field. And when EFT and EMDR are working on the energy fields, and so is sound therapy, so does a lot of other therapies, homeopathy, information imprinted onto water, which is what Nest Health is. That's all working to clear out the meridians and the energy field. So that's another missed root cause that we do want to work at the final level.
Yeah, so let's explain what is the biofield or the energy field for anyone who may be not familiar with that term. And we definitely have touched on that in the Myers Detox podcast previously. If you guys want to listen to any podcasts on Nest Health, but I talk about it a lot myself. Explain what that is exactly for people who may not understand that concept.
Yeah, so I think most people have probably heard from ancient yogi, Indian sort of ideas that there's an aura, that the body has an aura. And people have heard about Chinese medicine, and you have these meridians. So we have one of the best sort of explanations is the work of HeartMath. If you can imagine that, and this has been absolutely scientifically validated, there's no question about the fact that the humans have a field probably stretching quite a few meters around the body, emanating from the heart in a toroidal pattern. So it's sort of, it's coming round and up in a toroidal pattern like this. You can't completely see, but and it's emanating out of the heart. So that's a field that encapsulates the body. And it's made of what I call energy and information, meaning that it's electromagnetic and it responds to light, electromagnetic frequency, and it's made partly of photons of light. And we are beings of resonance and electricity, as well as having a biochemical body. You don't just have you have more than one body to consider for your health. You have your physical body and you have this electromagnetic body. And there's also, it's going a bit deep, but there's information which you could sort of talk about as in terms of codes and geometry that are actually doing things like giving a photon its shape. So we exist on the physical level. We exist at the subatomic level. We have a subatomic field, a subtle energy field that is profoundly controlling what's happening at the biochemistry. There are things happening in the body, communication happening in the body, instantaneous communications happening in the body that can't be signaled through any kind of biochemical hormone or even a nerve transmission. Like we have instantaneous communication happening, cells differentiating instantaneously. Like there has to be a field of information that's giving, it's non-local, if you like. So this is the biofield. It's been around for thousands of years in the Chinese medicine traditions, in the sort of yogic Indian traditions as well.
And that's the meridians and the chakras and the concept of energy blockages on the meridians or chakras.
But the idea, that we are a body electric, that we are, beings of resonance. There are over 5,000 papers on red light therapy for health, just shining red light and near infrared light on our bodies. There's 5,000 papers on PubMed showing that has a profound impact. Our cells are probably more than 100 times more sensitive to electromagnetic signaling than they are to biochemical signals. We're affected by light, we're affected by electromagnetic frequencies, we're affected profoundly by sound, everything to do with waves like sound and kind of sine waves. Our cells communicate to each other using those kind of electromagnetic frequency signals. So not only can the environment profoundly impact us when we have negative light and electromagnetics and negative sound waves coming our way, but they can also be used therapeutically. So it's to me, it's kind of more proof, that we are subatomic beings as well as having a physical body. You have an invisible subatomic body that is connected, by the way, potentially to everything in the universe, because at the quantum level, everything gets really weird, right? So, I think it's all points are connected in time and space at the quantum level. So there's weird things that can happen, but instantaneous communication, quantum entanglement, all that stuff. So that's all, it's real. If you I think people need to sort of, it's not controversial even. It's like there's some of the most proven studies are in quantum physics proving that, and by the way, our consciousness is entirely connected with all that too. So our consciousness definitely affects this quantum field that we have as well. So, but that's also where the trauma piece comes in again, because it's another way that the mind and body are talking to each other. And they are one thing. The mind and the body are one thing. What goes on emotionally will be expressed physically, and the physical body profoundly also impacts our mental well-being and our emotional state as well.
Yeah, but the beautiful thing is that, because you have this imprintation of trauma on the energy field, it can also be very easily and elegantly and reversed, so that you can clear your energy field of this trauma imprint. And it's not difficult to do. It's not terribly expensive. People just need to have an awareness about that and some information about modalities that are proven to work. And this for me was very profound, because I felt like I'd reached a point where I felt great physically. I felt like I was doing all my detox stuff. I was taking all the supplements and I was exercising and eating the right diet. And I I just didn't wake up feeling good. And I knew that I had trauma that I needed to work on. I'd done all the therapy. I read all the books on depression and improving your mental health and the 7 steps of highly effective people, and just done all that work already. And I still wasn't really where I wanted to be. And it was this working on the energy field, clearing trauma, that got me to that next level. But it's a key for people that are ill or just kind of not where they want to be mentally. It's so important to talk about this. Can you tell us about how maybe energetically we can go about clearing trauma from our energy field?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different therapies that work at the energy level. You could use EFT, you can use EMDR. Also, homeopathy can work on the emotions, something in a bottle. It's also Nest Health Pharmaceuticals are somewhat working on a similar kind of level. Information imprinted on water, people don't realize that water does have memory, and that's another level. It's still seen as controversial. I think there'll be more and more research coming out that proves that is the case, that the information is printed on our field. It's also water can hold the field information. Basically, there's something special happening about water, structured water. And we've got Professor Gerald Pollack on our trauma summit, by the way. So listen to what he's saying, and he basically confirmed it. He said there's no doubt water can contain memory. Structured water is what makes it like a microchip, makes water like a microchip, these sort of parallel lines and so on. So it becomes a storage unit.
Yeah,
So,
and infrared saunas increase structured water in the body, is that easy water in the body.
yes, exactly. So in terms of other energy sort of therapies, some of the Chinese medicine and acupuncture work on the energy field. I've mentioned network spinal analysis is another energy sort of field. We've got pulse electromagnetic field therapy will also work on the field and is actually being directly used to help brain entrainment and help the field and clear the field of trauma as well. So that's working at their electromagnetic level 2. There's family constellation therapy, which is working on intergenerational trauma at the energetic group level. There's things like Reiki fall into this category too, and so sort of everything working at that level. One of my favorites at the moment is music and sound, because sound therapy it kind of makes sense to a lot of people. Like if you think about a lower emotion, let's say a negative emotion, that's like maybe it's depression, maybe it's rage, resentment, it exists in the field and it's being stored in the waters of the body, your sort of whole field. It's as a dissonant frequency. It's an incoherent frequency. It's like a patch in the field, which is heavy, and it's causing distortions, it's causing energy blockages. So if you think about a tuning fork, or think about an opera singer when she's singing, if she has the right tone, she could shatter a glass. So that's sound therapy, that's pressure waves oscillating, and then it's coupling with the molecules in the glass and making the vibration of her voice is making the glass shatter. The molecules are starting to resonate with her voice and the glass shatters. This is when soldiers marching in unison on a bridge, the bridge will start moving in unison with the marching soldiers through this oscillation, and the bridge can collapse, which is why you should never march in unison on a bridge, right, with soldiers. So I didn't know about that before, but so they also use ultrasound to break up kidney stones. So it's the same idea that you're using oscillation and making the molecules of the kidney stone vibrate at the same rate as the ultrasound, and it breaks them up. You can do it with tumors, cancer tumors as well. So sound therapy is an expanding area. The conventional research is mainly looking at ultrasound, which is outside the audible sound, but you can also use tuning forks and meditations. Sound therapy works in two ways. One is through that oscillation, so we tune the biofield, and what we do is we where there's dissonance, we get the tuning fork, hold it in that area, and we'll sort of activate it until that negative frequency is cleared away, and basically that emotional release, and people will feel it'll actually come out. Often people will feel maybe a bit sad for no reason, a bit angry, and occasionally some memories come up, but it's a very safe way. It's not re-traumatizing, and it's a very safe way of just clearing out the dissonance in the energy field and making the field more coherent again. So sound therapy also does charge the body. So it does literally excite the molecules of the body, making the membrane potential increases, the voltage over the cell membrane potential increases, so you've got a more energized cell. So that's how ultrasound works as well. So you've got more energy, the cell has more energy to do work. So there's a charge with sound therapy, and there's the resonance. So it does two things: resonance, and it charges you. It's like sticking a battery. You're getting charged doing sound therapy, and you're also becoming more coherent. You're getting a more coherent energy field. So, and that now you're changing the epigenetic expression. I have to mention just lastly the work of Dr. Carlo Ventura, who's an amazing, he's the professor of biochemistry at the University of Bologna in Italy. He's a cardiologist and an MD and has a PhD in biochemistry. And he's the guy who actually discovered that stem cells can be sung to and you can direct sound at stem cells, and they stimulate and they differentiate, and they start to differentiate into bone cells and they'll into fat cells, and they'll help regenerate the body. So we know this with red light and pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. They stimulate stem cells. So does sound. So sound is stimulating your stem cells. His research has confirmed it. He's patented the process as well. So it's regenerative. We're talking about regenerating the body. So sound therapy is amazing, and it's a really nice experience. You know, it's a pleasant experience. You're not just using a sort of device that's invisible. You can use things like tuning forks, meditations, and so on. Brain entrainment can also, like, people have heard of binaural beats. Music has absolutely been found to be therapeutically beneficial for PTSD, for a whole range of homeostatic markers in the body as well. So that's the power of sound therapy. It changes the epigenetic expression. And here's what I'll just leave people to contemplate. I have found in my clinical experience, there is nothing that will trigger heavy metal detoxing more deeply than biofield tuning, sound therapy. And it's also why it comes with a bit of a warning of, don't jump into sound therapy. If you have got heavy metals, you're doing a sonic quantum detox, and there's nothing will reach that. Colonics won't reach that. Castor oil packs, all of the fasting, nothing reaches what I found sound therapy will do, because it's working at the quantum cellular level, subatomic level. And it's creating this coherence, and it's telling the genes to switch on or off in a healthy way. Suddenly we switch off this pyroluria. Suddenly the body's like got its B6 and zinc back. You're going to go straight into detox with that. So it's very interesting. One of the world leading experts, biofield tuning, which is Eileen McCusick, she has a contraindication on her website. If you've got heavy metals, she won't see you, because you need to be following a safe protocol for heavy metal detox. It needs to be done in the right order, and it could be, it could be dangerous or unsafe if you did it in the wrong order. So what does that tell you about sound therapy, pyroluria, and heavy metal toxins?
Yes. So there's a protocol to follow. And I thank you so much for mentioning that, because you've had this experience yourself when people are getting excited about something and feel like this is the answer finally, and this is what maybe I'm missing. And we talk about a lot of different, kind of alternative methods for heavy metal detoxification. This is something I absolutely employ. I'm on your advice doing the biofield tuning and whatnot. And I absolutely love it. I do it every single night, but I did myself take it very slow. But you've had people that kind of get excited about it, go gung-ho, and then they unfortunately can have a very strong heavy metal detox happening, and even an emotional detox, which can be, take people aback, surprise people, or, because you're kind of, taking this body that's out of tune and then getting it back into tune, and then it starts working, and you're like, wait a second, I want to feel better, right? So this does happen.
That's the message. Yeah. I think if you want a gentle experience of biofield tuning and sound therapy, I'd actually go to Eileen McCusick's website and go find one of her practitioners. You can do an hour's therapy in person, or you can get remote therapy. And I encourage people, if they want to have a go at sound therapy, that's the gentle type. I'm doing a program that I work with where it's much more intense, but you can control it by just doing it for a shorter period of time. And I teach people how to do sound therapy on themselves. But it's so powerful that people really do need to either stick to just doing 10 or 20 minutes a day and have a whole set of being aware about what happens physically, because the detox, but also emotionally. It's a journey, when suddenly, if you've been anxious your whole life, or you've had a whole chunk of your personality has been driven by feeling not good enough, and you start doing tuning therapy to clear that belief, and suddenly it goes away, you can start to wonder who you are. You have an identity crisis. You can feel like you're in the void. I've had people who have been stressed, living off adrenalized energy their whole life. Take that away, and they can either feel really flat and depressed, or they're actually just in a calm state, but they're interpreting it as depression because they don't know what it's like to be at peace. They've never had it. So there's a journey that people need to know about. and there are pitfalls. And it's a lot of emotions will intensify on their way out. So there are detox tools, like a whole bunch of detox tools, like things like, which we won't go into, but lemon baths and the certain crystals that will help clear things faster. Everything to do with water therapy, because water is really important. When you do sound therapy, it will mobilize the emotions and then toxins into the body's water. So you want to get that stuff out as fast as possible. Sauna therapy, steam room therapy all becomes really important. On my program, those things are mandatory because you need to, not only for the toxins, but the emotional work as well. You need to be flushing. I have special water that I recommend people use. So,
well, tell us about your program. You have an emotional detox program. That's what you're talking about, right?
It's called, the emotional detox program. Next few months, it will be available. But yeah, and I work with meditations, guided meditations that people do while they're doing the tuning fork therapy. So, and people can get a free meditation on my website. That's how they can stay in touch with me as well, because I'll announce the program later. It's about to be launched. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an amazing journey, and but yeah, you're changing your emotional set point is actually what you're doing. You're doing the real work. And of course that it also involves change as well. So you can have things happen like losing interest in old hobbies that just don't interest you anymore, foods you don't want to eat anymore, people you don't want to see anymore. So because your whole you'll start to realize how much your energy field is actually attracting you, what experiences you have in your life. So it can become a very spiritual experience as well, like waking up to who you are. It's an awakening experience. So that's quite interesting as well. Wow, we covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
Yeah, people don't like change either. So
I know, I was going to say, but then they want to feel good without changing anything. And that's where I'm like, it's insanity, isn't it? Definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So this embracing of change is critical. Changing your habits, routines, people that you might be hanging out with. Sometimes people like change jobs. It's like this can happen because you're changing so much as a person. And that puts some people off, and that's okay with me because they probably should be on my program. If they don't like change. If you don't want to feel better, really, because you don't want to do the change, then that's okay, but it's probably not for you then.
Yeah, and people have to be ready for that change also. They have to be ready and expect it and embrace it. And so you provide a lot of tools for people in that regard. So go to nikigratrix.com, sign up for her newsletter. You'll get the announcement when her emotional detox program is ready. I highly recommend that. But if you're ready to just dig in right now, so tell us about where we can go to sign up for your Trauma Super Conference.
Yes, so people can just go to traumasuperconference.com. So traumasuperconference.com. This is a great experience for people just to get it's a smorgasbord of having a taster of everything that you can do to heal yourself. And the reason I'm passionate about it because there's so much reductionism in the natural medicine. We're almost as bad as conventional medicine in the sense that, a practitioner's out there telling you to do something because that's just the modality they trained in, rather than thinking about the whole person and kind of going, well, I can fix this bit and help you with this bit, but you also need to consider the energetic level or the neurological level or this environmental thing that needs to change. So the conference is a way to get a taster of all of that to help people kind of go, wow, I've got at least 10 things that I hadn't done before that I didn't realize were relevant to me. And I would never, and it's a cheap way of doing it. Like, because you can go through spending thousands of dollars, trial and error with tons of different practitioners. Whereas with the summit is a perfect solution to that, an online conference like this, where for like, you can still buy the summit for like $60 as well if you want permanent access to it. Or you can, it started today, you can just go and listen to all the speakers each day. It will just help you get a feel for everything that's out there. Speaking to world-leading experts in every one of those modalities and health imbalances, mental, emotional, physical, energetic. So, don't miss it. Don't miss that.
I mean, it's unbelievable, this lineup that you have put together of the world's top experts on trauma and all the different modalities to address trauma. And I strongly urge people, that's why I keep talking about trauma it's mentioned usually at least once on most of my podcasts, is because, even if you're critically ill, if you're sick and you've been ill for a while, you're chronically fatigued, even bedridden, or just have multiple health diagnoses, you have to address trauma. And even if you do feel good, like you have relatively good health and you're just looking to up your game and biohack yourself, you also want to address trauma. So we're all in the same boat with this. So I highly recommend you guys go buy the summit so you can listen to it at your own pace. But also, we talked earlier about pyroluria. We talked about the trauma, how that causes pyroluria, inflammation, and then that leads to heavy metals accumulation. That leads to its own whole host of health issues. And so you guys will get lots of information on how to address that. And we covered a lot of ground on how to address that in this podcast. So Niki, thanks so much for coming on. Any closing thoughts or final words you want to give the audience?
Just know that you can heal yourself. Your body knows how to heal itself. And when we put all these things in place, and it's the awareness of knowing kind of what made up your storm. What was your storm? What was your personal story? Was it early life stress? What type of stress was it? What are your genes doing? And kind of what exposures have you had? And when you decode that, there's just tremendous hope. And there's huge amounts. We just wanted to get this out there because there is so much people can do. So we're just trying to educate people as best we can. And you can reverse this and you can get your life back. So, or feel amazing and be supercharged.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Niki, thanks for coming on the show. And everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to the Myers Detox podcast, where we talk about everything and all the different underlying root causes of heavy metal toxicity and how to get rid of it. And working on trauma is one of those aspects of detoxing your body physically and emotionally. So thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Wendy Myers of MyersDetox.com. I'll talk to you guys next week.